Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Let's have some fun. Story inspired by Pretzelgirl. I asked Steph, did you notice anything odd about Lexi today? Without even bothering to look up, Steph shrugged and just kept reading her book. That describes Steph to me a lot. She believes that she doesn't need to take me seriously at all. I continued, I mean, didn't she seem out of place somehow? Steph turned to face me and asked, perhaps karmically out of place? Let me just say that Steph Garrison is an interesting individual. Her incredible bright blue eyes somehow complement her cheaply dyed jet black hair. She always wears all black clothing, often with ripped fishnets if she can get away with it. She's your standard weird goth witch girl, with the exception that she wasn't before. She once resided in the body I currently occupy. She once had the name Zoe Burbank, but there was a small accident involving karmic entropy, not to mention the use of the name of the long-dead Greek goddess of chaos in vain. To cut a long story short, Jason, who I used to be, ended up switching places with Steph, myself, and our good friend. But that is a different tale. The point is that when I suggested that there might be a karmic issue with Lexi, Steph's interest was aroused. To put us all back in our original bodies, Steph and Jason have been diligently searching, and the potential for anything strange or bizarre may contain a clue that will help us in achieving that goal. There is always enough motivation to attract their interest in supernatural garbage. Steph asked me straight out, what's wrong with Lexi? I returned her whisper, saying, I think she's switched bodies with someone. I have her in my 9:30 aerobics class, and she seemed very odd in the locker room, confused, and I caught her sneaking glances at me in the shower. Okay, that's fine. That last statement wasn't quite accurate, even though I used to be that Jason. Due to certain circumstances, I not only ended up in Zoe's body, but also developed a much more feminine mindset. In actuality, I now behave and think like a girl. I'm a girl who isn't particularly pleased with her body. My breasts are not big enough. My hair is extremely unmanageable and mousy. And to make matters worse, I'm beginning to sag a bit in some places. I'm concerned that I won't be able to hold a guy's interest in a competitive situation. I find it amusing to imagine Lexi, or whoever inhabited her body, peeking into the shower to see my shimmering body. A girl must seek out her thrills wherever they may be, right? Steph questioned, is that all? I commenced, well, no. The truth is, you know the kind of person Lexi is or was. She's always been more of a girl like me than a girl like you, interested in guys and parties and looking good. But anyway, lately she hasn't worn makeup, her hair isn't done, and her clothes seem disheveled and very poorly coordinated, I might add. Steph shrugged impatiently and turned back to her book. Not that you don't, of course. I just meant that in a fashion-conscious way. I acknowledged that I was having a bad day, but I pressed, but what if it's not just a bad day? You managed, she said in response to the question. What if she's traded bodies with someone else? A guy who doesn't know how to deal with being trapped in a beautiful young girl's body? Yeah, but when we messed up, I had the advantage of picking up a lot of girly thought processes, I said. Steph couldn't resist grinning. I chuckled and said, benefit, eh? You sound like you're enjoying being a girl, Zoe Burbank. Steph's expression softened. Shut up. Okay, I'll tell you what to do. Speak with Lexi and ask if you can have her over to our dorm tonight. I'll bring Jason along and we'll see if we can't figure this out, but don't be shocked if it's all in your head, all right? Simple. I thanked Steph for her understanding and hurried off to find Lexi. Finding Lexi was simple enough to start with, and I'd finally get to assist Steph and Jason with some of their serious research into the paranormal. She wasn't just in my morning aerobics class with me, she also attended my afternoon speech class. So I doodled some cute pictures of flowers and suns with smiley faces in my notebook as I sat through the protracted dry lecture. Lexi wasn't seated in her usual spot, and she was sporting a pair of shabby sweatpants and worn-out tennis shoes today, as I noticed. Her sweatshirt also appeared to be covered in ketchup splatters. That was so dissimilar from the preppy fashion queen I imagined myself to be. After class, I went up to her. I gave her a shoulder tap and asked, Lexi, She appeared startled and quickly spun around, dropping her books in the process. "Oops," I said as I knelt down to assist her in picking up her dropped load. It's okay," she said, her smile faltering. "I didn't mean to frighten you." I stumbled over my opening. "I was just wondering." Lexi blushed and said, "Well, if everything is okay, I mean, you seem a little, not exactly yourself lately." Exactly what I thought when she said, "I have been having a hard time. I guess you could say I haven't exactly been in my right mind the last day or so." The subliminal allusion to having exchanged bodies with another person. Now we were making progress. She was letting me in. "Now make a push, but do it gently," I said in a low voice. "Some of my friends and I might be able to help. And we know a little bit about what makes a person not in her right mind, or in his right mind either," Lexi asked, sounding suddenly flustered and anxious. She stumbled. "I don't think I follow," she said. I said, "We might be able to assist. That's all I can say here. Meet me at my dorm room tonight if you can. Berkeley Hall 128, please." "I'll be there," she said with a sudden intensity that surprised me, and sure enough, she arrived. As well as fairly early in the evening, Steph and Jason had just returned from the library, and I was relaxing and listening to music when Lexi knocked on the door. Since Steph and I share a fairly small dorm room, it was somehow possible for us to all fit inside that night, along with Lexi and Jason. But I prefer it that way. People feel more intimate and at ease disclosing private information in cozy surroundings. After all, that is what we were about to do. We took a seat on the rug after I introduced Lexi to everyone and asked her to describe what had occurred. She began, "I don't know that I can." Jason laughed. "You won't believe me." "We'll believe you if this is what I think it's about," he said. Steph grinned and nodded. "Maybe we should tell her our story first, gang." And Jason told Lexi the tale of how we all ended up swapped into the wrong bodies and been in this situation. And he told us how we're trying to learn as much as we can about the ways and means of both magic and science in the hope that someday we can get ourselves back into our proper bodies. When Jason had finished his brief story, Lexi smiled and started her own. "I'm trusting that this whole thing isn't just a trick to make me look bad. You guessed it right, I'm not really Lexi. But I have to turn to someone, and you guys seem to be the best option I have. I'm a man named Gary Simon, and 2 days ago I just went to sleep and everything was nice and normal. And then I woke up and realized that I was a girl. I don't know what happened. I can't imagine what happened. I used to be a strong, healthy, handsome male, a perfect specimen of manhood. Nothing is obviously wrong, except I'm a girl. Somehow Lexi stole my body from me and is now leading my life. I was wearing a nightie, and I had breasts, but I haven't been able to tell anyone. Not until now, at least, and I don't dare approach my old body. He seems to be acting totally normally. He's just a normal guy and doesn't seem to notice me at all. She's poor, I thought. She has until now kept everything inside. Yes, she was once a hardened individual who had no emotion, but her hormones are now playing havoc with her mind in various ways. Suddenly, trading bodies with a stranger is stressful, which adds to the difficulty of maintaining emotional control. Without someone encouraging to support you, like I did with Steph and Jason, it must be awful. I was overjoyed to be able to support someone else who was going through such a traumatic event. I gave her a big hug and used a paper to dab her tears away. "We'll return Lexi to her rightful place, so don't worry," I assured her. "We'll manage to pull it off somehow," she said. "That's just it, I'm not Lexi," she gasped. "Steph, can you help Lexi?" Jason stood up. "Steph, can you help Lexi?" I've gotten used to the two of them being smarter than I am most of the time. They've done this thing with the furrowed brows and the sneaky nods in the past. It always means they're both thinking the same thing. Gary's gone. Simply be there for him and give him some comfort. "Zoe, I think there's more to this than even you had initially suspected. I'd like to have a word with Zoe in private." He and I walked out into the hallway. "Well, I am aware of Gary Simon. Likewise, Steph. They never invite me to join them when they visit museums, libraries, or seminars, so I guess that's just because they know I wouldn't really enjoy it. Once upon a time, maybe, but things are different now. Anyway, Jason continued, Gary Simon has been obsessed with Lexi for the longest while. He's an upperclassman psych major who's in a couple workshops I've gone to with her since she enrolled in college. She, however, will not interact with him in any way. I also don't hold it against her. He is a jerk who treats men like dirt and manipulates and uses women. Jason shook his head. I don't think so. And he's not the kind of guy we'd expect to see sobbing on your dorm room floor. Well, obviously the stress of trading bodies with Lexi has gotten to him, I suggested. Did Lexi just describe Gary as a cool guy in there? She also gave him the compliment handsome once. I wouldn't anticipate her to say something like that about him. I knew Lexi as a sort of acquaintance, and from what I could tell, she wasn't the kind of girl who would consider Gary Simon to be a perfect specimen of manhood. Jason continued, and Gary Simon wouldn't have said he had breasts. That's true, I thought. Well, how do we find out for sure? I questioned. Either his mind has been seriously mucked about with, or that's not really Gary Simon inhabiting Lexi's body. When asked, and what do we do about it even if you're right? He replied, I've got an idea. I agreed to stay with Lexi all night and support her through this. But I'll need Steph's help for this one. Can you handle Lexi for a bit? Just humor her and keep her calm until we get back. With the intention of visiting Lexi's dorm to speak with her roommate and collect some of her belongings so she could spend the night with us, Steph and Jason left the area. Except that their absence lasted for about 5 hours. To my credit, I realized they weren't just picking up her toothbrush and a change of clothes after 45 minutes. However, 5 hours was more than enough time for Lexi and I to have a deep, meaningful conversation. She appeared more like a normal girl, in many ways, the more we spoke. She insisted that she was Gary Simon and that she didn't feel at all feminine or at ease wearing women's clothing, but her demeanor, speech, and body language all seemed appropriate for a woman. You can't fake a lot of the subtleties in it. She had the appearance of a girl pretending to be a man. However, I'm a girl at heart. I then reminded myself that someone could just as easily draw the same conclusions about me. If I had to act masculine today, I'm not sure I could. And I used to be a guy not too long ago. People evolve. Jason and Steph eventually came back. Jason grinned gleefully. Exactly what I suspected it would be. Steph laughed. But we managed to turn the tables on him, especially considering his field of expertise. I might have suspected earlier on that a creep like Gary Simon might have tried a stunt like this. Lexi appeared to be on the verge of tears once more as she said, he might have had his area of expertise, but combined with the magico-scientific powers of Jason and I, he was no match. Steph's face softened once more, and I noticed Jason stifle a chuckle. But I'm Gary Simon, and I'm not a creep. Oh, just put me back in my rightful body. Puh, lollies. You're not Gary Simon, Lexi, Steph said gently. When you wouldn't go out with him and repeatedly turned down his advances, Gary Simon, a PSEIH student who has been studying a lot about hypnotic suggestion and the application of different drugs to induce a more suggestible state, hypnotized you. How? Lexi stammered, obviously fighting back tears. Jason said, he crept into your room at some point and mixed his drugs into your daily multivitamin. We also discovered a tape recorder under your bed that was equipped with a remote timer and a looping message urging you to think you were Gary Simon and that Gary Simon is the ideal example of manhood. Steph said, we think he implanted this emotional distress in you because he wanted to exact this sort of revenge on you to make you feel just like he did when you rejected him. Steph and I left the dorm for a minute and came back with coffee for everyone. Jason is a psychology student too, so don't worry. He can easily bring you back to your normal self. It was getting late, and I had a sneaking suspicion that I wouldn't get any of my necessary beauty sleep. Jason had finished his deprogramming by the time we returned, and Lexi was clearly more at ease. Much more quietly and firmly than before, Lexi said, "Thank you guys so much for helping me out." I blushed. "And I want to thank all of you, but especially Zoe, for taking the time to notice there was something wrong with me in the first place. I doubt many other people would have cared. If it weren't for you guys, I might have ended up in a mental hospital. I said, all too frequently, we become so preoccupied with our own lives that we fail to notice the people around us and the issues they might be facing. Well, thanks, she said. It's just good karma to take an interest in your friend's well-being. Steph and Jason exchanged glances once more and then began to laugh. But I sure would like to get revenge on that dirty scum for what he put me through, Jason exclaimed. They're at it once more, being aware of something before anyone else. Steph managed. I'm sorry, she said. Jason made a tape similar to the one used on you while we were out, and we popped that into the tape player and got it hidden under Gary's bed. We didn't have time to do any sort of therapy on him, Jason said. It's just that we took the liberty of exacting vengeance for you already. We were fortunate to have Steph, a somewhat accomplished witch who could cast a temporary hypnosis spell but wasn't strong enough to switch people's bodies around. He'll only be affected for a few days. I just blew some dust of suggestibility into his window. He'll probably bother you a lot about getting his body back from you, but it's only temporary. And I thought you'd probably enjoy the results, said Lexi, beaming with vengeful joy. But when he wakes up this morning, he'll be 100% convinced that he really is Lexi. She said, I owe you guys a lot for this. Oh, the joy will be shared by all of us tomorrow morning, Steph said. And sure enough, the following day, Gary Simon's room in Randall Hall was the source of a very loud scream. He loudly declared to anyone who would listen that he was a girl. According to what I overheard from others throughout the day, Lexi was him. Of course, no one initially accepted him. But the looks he got weirder and weirder the more he kept going into women's bathrooms and locker rooms all day. We gave him permission to return to Lexi's dorm room that evening, just for more rambunctious, nefarious fun. After hearing what Gary had tried, she was more than willing to give up a night of sleep, so we had to make the whole thing prior arrangements with her roommate. In our dorm room, Steph, Jason, Lexi, her roommate, and I gathered around a small crystal ball to watch Gary's antics in Lexi's room. He undressed, put on a sports bra and a pair of white cotton leggings before donning a pair of purple-flowered pajamas. He made several attempts to curl his hair for the evening, but it was simply too short to be worthwhile. Steph refused Jason's request for a further spell to lengthen his hair because she felt there was already too much magic going on. The following day, Gary arrived at his classes fully made up, with his short hair curled as best he could, and dressed in a long blue skirt and a tight-fitting white silk blouse. He limped around campus wearing a pair of navy flats that were at least 2 sizes too small. When he walked, he swayed like a woman and made a valiant effort to imitate Lexi's high voice. He carried her purse and frequently stopped to carefully apply makeup while inspecting his face in a small mirror, wondering why his beard was growing so much that it was getting in the way of his foundation. He was once more violently ejected from a few bathrooms used by women. He was an embarrassment on campus and a complete mess, but this was always his desire. He had proposed the idea of trading places with Lexi. We had simply set it up for him out of courtesy. In the end, it was all his fault. Naturally, it all began to gradually wear off a day or so later. Gary quickly reverted to his masculine self, albeit one who is now much meeker and humbler. He has gained a new reputation on campus as a ladies' man in a very different context than before. However, in my opinion, that is sort of karmic justice. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.